Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And I'm their guest, Alan Singer from Hofstra University.
Alan Singer, thank you again, Dr. Singer, for joining us. This is being brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Zoom, and EVT Educational Productions. And we're actually taping this the Wednesday before our Monday air, and it's actually the day after the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial came down. And as most of the world knows by now, former police officer Chauvin was convicted of all 3 counts: second-degree murder, a manslaughter charge, and I can't remember the 3rd charge, but all 3 convictions were guilty. He was guilty on all 3 counts. And the question that everybody is asking, besides a sigh of relief that the world collectively exhaled, is this an inflection point? Is this something we should be jumping up and down about in joy and gratitude? Or is this just one step in trying to make what's wrong, woefully wrong in our criminal justice system get right? And the reason Dr. Singh is with us, as a historian of note on any number of issues, but especially history and history on racial matters, there is a decided history of policing in this country that's detrimental to Blacks and people of color. And on this policing issue, bring us a little bit of that history, Dr. Singh, would you?
Well, on-duty police officers are rarely charged with a serious crime, especially with murder or manslaughter when they've killed an African-American man or woman. Even when they are charged, only about a third are convicted. And none of the Louisville, Kentucky police officers responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor ever faced criminal charges. This summer, in Rochester, New York, a divided grand jury refused to indict 3 police officers with criminally negligent homicide, not even second-degree murder, after Daniel Prude, a mentally ill Black man, died in police custody after they hooded him. So every year, armed police officers kill about 1,000 people in the United States. And since 2005, only 121 police officers have been charged with murder or manslaughter for crimes they committed while on duty. So we're looking at 15,000 murders and 125 charged. And of the 121, only 44 have been convicted, and usually it's for a lesser charge or a reduced sentence. Now, police officers, just since 2015, have fatally shot at least 135 unarmed Black men and women. And overwhelmingly, the shooters were white officers. Now, there are a couple of things that are very disturbing here. I mean, even more disturbing. So New York City records show that officers with multiple negative marks in their files are 3 times more likely to fire their guns at other officers. So what you got is police officers are already tagged for violence, just keep doing it without any repercussions. Chauvin had 22 serious complaints in his file, including 6 times since 2015, where he pinned people down and with his knee on their necks, and systematic issues that Minnesota never addressed. Of the 6, 2 were African-American, 1 was Latino, 1 was Native American, and the other 2, they had no record of what their background was. So here we have a police officer, consistent with the history that's going on of violent behavior towards African-American and other minorities, with this long list of recorded complaints, and nothing was ever done.
You raise a number of interesting points. The Prude case in Rochester, One of the stories I read pertaining to that was that talking about police not testifying against other police, when the prosecutors who tried to get that indictment, they called a medical examiner to testify before that grand jury. And he basically torpedoed their case with his ruling on the fact that Prude was not asphyxiated, that he died from whatever other causes, that those other underlying causes they tried to bring up in the Chauvin case. And so we have this history of when police are brought up on charges, if the blue wall does not break or crack like it did in the Chauvin case, they tend to get off.
Yeah.
So historically,
Look, what happened here, which was kind of, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
What happened here, which was so striking, is one, all the supervisors said, this is not police procedure. This is not what we do. And that was striking. The second thing is the medical testimony overwhelmingly is that he killed George Floyd. But the other part of it was that the whole world saw him kill George Floyd on that cell phone camera that was done by that 17-year-old girl who was there, who didn't back off from the police, but stayed there and shot the film. And I think the cell phone made it hard for the police to deny what happened. I also think that the Black Lives Matter protests made it hard for anybody to deny what happened, because people kept on saying, no, this is what happened. And, there was some attack on Maxine Waters for saying, if the congressional representative from California, for saying if he's not convicted, we're going to be in the streets. She was right, because it was people in the streets that forced the legal system to respond in a way it did.
I mean, you're right, Alan. I mean, this was such a difference from what we're used to. I mean, even in this case, we saw that the defense tried to pull from that same Rochester playbook with in this case, with a retired medical examiner who tried to argue that George Floyd somehow died from the exhaust from the police car and not from the knee. So even in the current case, we can see that playbook being used unsuccessfully. But as you said, Alan, in Rochester, which is an egregious case, because not only was he did he have a hood over his head, he was naked in the streets, in Rochester. And as you said, they couldn't even get the grand jury to hit on the lower charge.
Yeah, and there was no rebuttal testimony from, quote, an advocate for the dead Mr. Prude, because it was a grand jury hearing. And so they had selected witnesses that was testifying before that grand jury. And theoretically, that was supposed to have been the prosecutor's witness, and he turned out to be siding with the defense of those cops. So you can't get around that system very often. But what struck me, and that we need to keep in mind, is the fact that Chauvin got convicted on all three, got found guilty on all three counts, is a possible crack in the blue wall and a crack in the systemic injustice in the system. But we have to keep in mind that they've got three other cops, police officers, who are about to come to trial in August. Let me see if I can quote from that Wall Street Journal story. Former officers Tou Thao, Thao, J. Alexander Keung, and Thomas Lane each faced 2 counts, aiding and abetting second-degree murder and aiding and abetting manslaughter for their actions in Floyd's death. They're set to go on trial in August, and their lawyers have indicated in court papers they will fight the charges and have sought to have the charges dismissed. And so we will be able to get a sense, I think, of whether or not there's a real inflection point when those other 3 officers come to trial in Minneapolis. But Raymond, you had some stuff, if I'm not remiss, that was on the New York Times front page last Sunday or the Sunday before last from when we
Well,
aired.
yeah, so 63, they reported that 3 people a day have been killed by police since the trial began.
Since March of this
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
since March 29th, whatever that day was, 3 people every day?
Every day, for a total of last count 65. Of course, that's gone up since Sunday.
Yeah, because that young lady, young girl, 16-year-old girl.
In Columbus, Ohio, yeah,
Exactly.
Makia Bryant. It was, I didn't see the full video. I don't know if the full video has been released. The
Not
portion
all
of the
of it.
video that I saw was her squirming on the ground. Now, you might call that resisting police. I call it trying not to get killed.
No,
And it blacks out, you hear the gunshots, but she was definitely on the ground.
no. I saw part of the video. Bob, you may have seen it also.
Have you seen more of it than I have?
Yeah. You can see the body cam. You can see the cop getting out of the car. You see him come forward, but he's coming forward with his gun pointed already. He's already drawn his gun.
Well, yeah,
because of reporting, theoretically, he's on a call about somebody threatening someone with a knife. So he already comes with his gun drawn.
Let me contrast that with a white suspect perpetrator by the name, let me put on my glasses here, I can't see a darn thing without them. Gentleman by the name of, great. I'm sorry, bear with me for a second. A gentleman by the name of Luke Alvin Burns. I'm guessing at the pronunciation of that last name. He was in a home improvement store and he refused to wear a mask. Got into an altercation with one of the employees, apparently pushed or struck the employee. I'm not clear on that point. At any rate, the police were called as a result. The police caught up with him out in the parking lot. He scuffled with them, trying to get into his car, got into his car, apparently hit one of the police officers with a hammer. Didn't attempt to hit him, actually hit him. The man's in the hospital. And plus, that police officer that was hit was holding on to the driver's side door as the suspect sped away with him attached to it. He was charged with assault.
I'm not even.
Nobody shot him. Nobody pulled a gun. The man was charged with assault.
And he's right, and he's alive to speak today.
Yes,
and
he is.
And
here, go on with that, on and on and on. But it's an age-old story, and it continues to happen.
No. I believe
are automatically perceived as a threat by our white society, and everybody's got that prejudice to one degree or another. Cops, it's number 10.
I sympathize with your umbrage, and I actually agree with you 100%, because what I was about to try to say that you blew me off because of your anger, that a 16-year-old black girl is lying dead next to a tussle and an argument, is that he and his fellow officers did not approach with the thought of breaking up the scuffle.
No, of course
they just
not.
approached with the fact that we're going to lay into whoever these people are, no matter who they are, because as far as they were concerned, this was a threatening situation. Now, there's going to be more to come out on this.
Oh, I'm sure.
I am just still beside myself that he came out of that car with that gun drawn, and he was still yards away when he pulled off those 4 shots. And he might have hit both people that were in that scuffle when he pulled off those 4 shots. So there could have been 2 girls laying dead, 2 black girls laying dead, just because now their story is he was saving the life of the other person that this young girl was assaulting with a knife. I'm not, going to get into what probably needs to be thoroughly investigated, but I'm just saying I agree with you, Raymond. That young black girl would not be dead if she were a young white girl in a scuffle, period. That's a given. So I don't know.
I agree. I agree with
Alan. You got some more history from 1900 or wherever when about how this preconception of police and black people has always gone down.
Look, I mean, it in some of the ways it's beyond belief because it's been going on for so long. One of the things I was looking at in 1900, there was a police riot in New York City. And the police were just systematically attacking black men in the street. And what happened was a number of the black men were immigrants from British Guyana. Guyana was a British colony at the time.
Mhm.
The British consulate intervened to get the New York police to stop. I mean, so it's a national phenomenon. The other one that I came across, and we had talked about it earlier, is the story of Isaac Woodard, who recently died. And Woodard is a decorated war veteran. He's on a bus wearing his uniform in 1946.
Yeah,
He's dragged off the bus by police in South Carolina. He's beaten. He's thrown into jail. And in jail, he's beaten so severely that he's blinded for the rest of his life.
Mhm.
The local sheriff was acquitted by an all-white jury. The incident was so striking because he was in uniform that President Truman actually used it as one of the arguments when he made the decision to issue an executive order to desegregate the American military. And again, the thing is, these things haven't stopped. Black men in military uniforms are still at risk. I mean, Jackie Robinson, who baseball celebrated, we had Jackie Robinson last day, everybody won number 42. When Jackie Robinson was stationed in Texas during the war, he was a second lieutenant in the military, and he refused to sit in the back of a bus, and he was pulled off the bus by MPs, and he was threatened with court-martial.
Yep, yep.
But just recently in
Did-
Virginia, a black second lieutenant who was in uniform was taunted, threatened, pepper sprayed, and pinned on the ground. Why? They said he didn't have license plates, but of course it was a newly purchased car with the paper plate in the rear view mirror.
That's
Now,
the
after
one
all
that happened
this-
last December that just came to light.
Now, after all this happened, they didn't arrest him and no charges were filed because the police were outrageous and he didn't do anything other than driving all black.
Hey, Alan, I got one for you. My uncle, a veteran, returned from the war, World War II, to Harlem. He was still in his uniform because he had just been separated. I don't know all of the details. I know that he was somewhere, his wallet was picked. He could identify the subject. He went to the local police station and said, my wallet's been picked, or can you help? He was beat up. They beat the shit out of, excuse my language, they beat the hell out of him for being belligerent.
Who beat the hell out of him?
For being belligerent.
Who beat him?
Oh, the police. The police.
You
Because
didn't
he went
say
to the
that. I
police
know he was at the police station, but I need to hear you say that.
and they beat him. No, I did say it. I think you missed it, or maybe I missed saying it and thought I did. At any rate, he went to the police station to report the incident, could identify the person that picked his wallet, and he got beat up for his efforts because, quote, he was being belligerent.
Okay, so,
In
I mean,
19
attitudes have changed, thank God. But this is where this is the way it's been. It's ingrained. There are good cops and bad cops. I happen to know a lot of cops. I happen to know a lot, and they're all decent people. And none of them would have done anything like that. And they're all offended by what's going on today.
yeah,
But there are those bad apples out there.
this
and
is beyond, Ray, this is beyond bad apples. Now, we're
Yeah.
talking
You're right.
systemic,
It is beyond
we're
bad.
talking systemic racism,
Beyond
a
bad.
systemic attitude. Bob, did you get a chance to dig into those stories on the Supreme Court underpinnings for why cops act the way they do? That
Yes.
would put a lot of this in perspective, because I mean, even from the time when Plessy versus Ferguson got passed and they said there's no white person in this country needs to affect any rights of any Black person in this country. That's a Supreme Court ruling that applied
That
across
was
the
Dred
board.
Scott.
It had
That was
nothing-
Dred Scott.
had
not
nothing to
Plessy.
do with policing. That's just societal white supremacy, okay?
Yes.
But when it comes to the law, give us some of those cases that underpins why we have such a problem in this country, locally and nationally.
Okay, I'm going to try to share as I talk about it. But yeah, as you said, there are a number of Supreme Court cases that have basically gotten us to where we are right now today. I mean, it's upsetting as okay. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing because it doesn't seem like it wants to do that today. Okay, now I'm out of it. Okay, and I'm just going to read it without sharing it. But yes, there's been a number of Supreme Court decisions that have allowed police to use minor infractions like a traffic stop to go ahead and search for other other things that they could pull over a person of color for. Let me pull up this political story. I won't try to share it, but I'll just read from the graph that I thought said everything. Driving while Black is a tongue-in-cheek expression that describes a frightening reality. Police can and often do find any reason to pull over Black drivers. And I'm going to skip to the next paragraph. The Supreme Court opened the door to legally permissible racialized policing with the 1967 case, Terry versus Ohio, by allowing police to conduct certain cursory searches, now known as stop and frisk, based on the low legal standard of, quote, reasonable suspicion. As our country's experience with stop and frisk vividly demonstrates, however, for police, reasonable suspicion is too often synonymous with being Black or brown and in public. So, and there was a couple other.
There's a key one, I think, Bob, that you should bring to our attention, and that's the one that came down with this qualified immunity thing.
Yes, I can scroll down to that really quickly.
That case is egregious because those cops went to the wrong house. If you could bring it up, that would be amazing, because I think they may have injured the wrong people, did all kinds of crazy things. And when the people tried to get redress against the police department, the Supreme Court says no. If you could call up the case, that would be great.
I think I have it here.
Okay.
The permissiveness with which the court treats policing is not limited to stops and searches. In the earlier 1982 case, Hollow versus Fitzgerald, the court made the lethal decision to create the doctrine it called, quote, qualified immunity, which has since allowed police to injure and kill with little or no consequence unless their conduct, quote, violates clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known, a standard that has proven difficult to overcome. And that is written with such a wide breadth of interpretation. I can't see what case wouldn't apply, how you couldn't apply that to a case.
They went to the wrong house in that case, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
They terrorized the family in that house. I don't know, one of them might have gotten hurt, injured, whatever. And when the people tried to sue the police department, they said, we don't care if it was the wrong house. We don't care if they made a mistake. They're cops, and because they're cops, they have, quote, qualified immunity from any such prosecution. And so based on that, now all these fraternal order of police, they put in all their contracts across the country in every jurisdiction that their people are qualified immunity, and you can't do this. You can't keep their bad conduct in their files. You can't disclose their bad conduct. All of this stuff is what they've been getting away with and what they're still fighting to get away with, even when municipalities try to upgrade their policing tactics.
No, I agree, Eric. I mean, they've been given such a wide, subjective ability to do as they want to do it. And we have about 2.5 minutes left.
Well, with that as our guide, maybe what I should try to do, guys, is to pull up that Gonzaga report, because we're talking about how many people have been killed by police over the years. And if I can pull it up, I will try to bring that on screen, share the screen, and we'll just let the folks at home see for themselves how many people have died at the hands of police since, I presume, 2009 or whatever. It's a horrendously long file.
And while you're trying to pull that up, Eric, and I'll shut up as soon as I hear it, you asked about looking at the video. I couldn't do it yesterday. I've had enough of looking at these videos.
I hear you.
It's just too much for me. I'll watch it at some point, but it's really overwhelmed me at this point.
I'm going to hit share screen and see if I can bring up the list. And if I do, I'll start to scroll it, and you know we're going to try to go out, okay?
Bob, send it to me. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Sharing screen now. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, here we go. I'll try to start the scroll, and you let me know when we're almost out of time, Bob.
Sure. Kudos to the people at Gonzaga for putting together this list, because I've seen a number of these, and this one is particularly well curated, as we have about a minute left.
Yeah, it's just truly amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Their names on there I've never even heard of. Didn't make the news.
Too many people.
We see the familiar ones. We see Philando Castile up there right now.
There are dozens more that you never heard of because it never made the news.
Most of these names I haven't heard of.
Sandra Bland.
We're quite lucky to hear about that young lady, given the interest in the Chauvin trial. And we have about 15 seconds left.
There's Walter Lamar Scott. His killer tried to reduce his sentence and didn't. So, okay, folks, this has been Media Watch. We'll catch you the next time, folks. You stay safe in the time of COVID. I'm Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Media Watch at EVT on Twitter and YouTube.
And I'm Raymond Peterson saying goodbye.
And Alan Singer, thank you for including me in this.
Stay safe, folks. Catch you the next time.